My son said, "I'm selling your house to buy a new car for my wife. You have 3 days to pack your things." I didn't argue, but he didn't know that the house had actually been. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 32 years, I lived in the same 2-story colonial house on Maple Street. My late husband Robert and I raised our son Michael there. We painted the shutters green every 5 years, planted roses by the mailbox each spring, and hosted Thanksgiving dinners that filled every room with laughter and the smell of roasting turkey. After Robert passed 7 years ago, the house became both my sanctuary and my burden. Too big for one person, yet filled with memories I couldn't abandon. I worked as a bookkeeper at Henderson's Hardware downtown. The pay was modest, but it kept me busy and gave structure to my days. My son Michael seemed to understand. He'd visit twice a month with his wife Jessica, and we'd have Sunday dinner together. Nothing fancy. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, the recipes Robert loved. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. Then something shifted. It started 3 months ago, in September. Michael and Jessica began visiting more frequently, every week, sometimes twice. Jessica would walk through my house slowly, touching things. She'd run her fingers along the mantelpiece, study the crown molding, stand in the kitchen with her arms crossed, nodding to herself. "This is such a big house for one person, Margaret," she'd say with a tight smile. "Don't you feel lonely here?" I'd brush it off. I managed just fine. But the comments continued. Michael would join in too. "Mom, you're 73. What if you fall and no one's here? What if something happens?" His concern seemed genuine, but something in his tone felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced these lines. During one visit in October, I caught Jessica taking photos of my living room. She claimed she was just capturing memories, but she was photographing the built-in bookshelves, the hardwood floors, the bay windows. Why would someone photograph architectural features for memories? The visits became longer. They'd arrive around noon and stay until evening, walking through rooms they'd known their entire marriage, suddenly fascinated by square footage and lot size. Jessica talked constantly about houses she'd seen online, their prices, their features, their locations. Michael would add comments about property values in our neighborhood, about how much homes were selling for on Maple Street. I wasn't stupid. I'd kept books for 40 years. I knew when numbers weren't adding up, and I knew when people were circling something they wanted. 3 weeks ago, I overheard them talking in my backyard. I'd gone to the kitchen for iced tea when their voices drifted through the open window. "We just need to convince her it's for her own good," Jessica was saying. "Once she's in a nice little apartment, she'll realize how much easier life is." "And we can finally get the Lexus," Michael added. "The SUV you wanted. Maybe even upgrade to the premium package." My hands shook as I poured the tea. The glass clinked against the pitcher. Then came yesterday. They arrived without calling first. Michael walked in with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, determined, businesslike. Jessica stood behind him, her arms crossed, wearing the satisfied smile of someone who'd already won. "Mom, we need to talk," Michael said. He didn't sit down. Neither did she. "I'm listening," I said quietly. "I'm selling your house to buy a new car for Jessica, a Lexus SUV. She deserves it after everything she's done for this family." His voice was flat, matter of fact, as if he were discussing the weather. "You have 3 days to pack your things. We've already looked at a studio apartment across town. It's much more suitable for someone your age." The words hit like a physical blow. 3 days. My home of 32 years. For a car. Jessica finally spoke, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You'll love the apartment, Margaret. It's small, but it's all you need. No more worrying about maintenance or yard work." I looked at my son. This man I'd raised, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college education I'd helped pay for by working overtime. How had we arrived here? And if I refuse? I asked quietly. Michael's jaw tightened. Don't make this difficult. The house is too much for you anyway. This is what's best. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply nodded slowly and said, I understand. They left 20 minutes later, satisfied with my compliance. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know the house wasn't actually mine to sell. After they drove away, I sat in my living room for 2 hours, staring at the wallpaper Robert and I had chosen in 1993. The afternoon light filtered through the bay windows, casting familiar shadows across the hardwood floor. My hands trembled in my lap. 3 days. He'd given his own mother 3 days. I thought about calling him back, explaining, pleading. But the coldness in his eyes stopped me. That wasn't my son standing in my living room today. That was a stranger wearing his face, speaking words his wife had planted in his mind like poisonous seeds. How much had I lost already? I mentally tallied the damage. My relationship with my only child, possibly destroyed. My sense of security, shattered. My trust in the family I'd built, gone. The question wasn't whether I'd lost things. The question was whether I'd lose everything. Could I really end up homeless because my son wanted to buy his wife a luxury car? No. I stood up abruptly, steadying myself against the armrest. No, this wouldn't be my ending. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the fireproof box from under the bed. My fingers fumbled with the combination. Robert's birthday, forever burned into muscle memory. Inside were our important documents, birth certificates, my marriage license, Robert's death certificate, insurance papers. And there it was, the deed to the house. I pulled it out carefully, unfolding the creased legal paper I hadn't looked at in years. My eyes scanned down to the ownership section, and there it was, exactly as I remembered. The house belonged to the Riverside Community Trust. Robert had set it up 10 years before he died, working with our attorney, Daniel Morrison. We'd transferred ownership to the trust to protect assets for estate planning purposes, to avoid probate complications, to ensure everything would be handled smoothly after we were both gone. I had lifetime residency rights. I could live here until I died or chose to leave. But I couldn't sell it. Neither could Michael. The trust beneficiary, after my passing, was scheduled to be Michael. Everything would have eventually gone to him anyway. But only after I was gone. Only after I'd lived my full life in the home we'd built together. He would have inherited everything. He just had to wait and let me live in peace. But Jessica didn't want to wait, and my son had become her puppet. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching the deed, feeling something hard crystallize in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, more calculated. If Michael wanted to play games with my home, he'd learn a lesson about exactly what he was trying to take. My first step was clear. I picked up my phone and dialed Daniel Morrison's office. His secretary answered on the third ring. Morrison and Associates. This is Margaret Patterson. I need to speak with Daniel as soon as possible. It's urgent regarding the Riverside Community Trust. He has an opening tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I'll take it. After hanging up, I called my bank. I needed to verify all my accounts, ensure Michael hadn't been added to anything without my knowledge. These past months of unusual visits made me paranoid. What else had they been planning? The bank confirmed my accounts were secure. Only my name appeared on them. Small relief. But I needed more than legal protection. I needed to understand what I was really dealing with. Was this just greed? Or was there something darker happening? How far would they go? I made myself tea and sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. I began writing down everything, every strange comment, every suspicious visit, every moment that hadn't felt quite right over the past 3 months. The pattern emerged clearly on paper. This hadn't been impulsive. They'd been planning this systematically, softening me up, preparing me for eviction from my own life. Jessica wanted the money from my house to buy luxuries. Michael had become complicit, choosing his wife's desires over his mother's well-being. They saw me as an obstacle, not a person, not family. The hurt cut deep, but beneath it, something else grew. Determination. I looked around my kitchen, at the coffee maker Robert bought me for our 20th anniversary, at the chip in the tile where Michael had dropped a plate when he was 8, at the growth chart mark still visible on the doorframe. This was my home, my life, my history, and I would fight for it. Tomorrow, I'd see Daniel. I'd confirm my legal standing. Then I'd decide exactly how to respond to my son's ultimatum. But tonight, I'd let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was the weak, confused old woman they wanted me to be. They'd learn differently soon enough. The next morning, I woke at 6:30, earlier than usual. Sleep had come in fragments, interrupted by alternating waves of anxiety and resolve. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, rehearsing what I'd tell Daniel Morrison. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Michael. Mom, have you started packing yet? No greeting, no pretense of concern, just business. I'm working on it, I lied calmly. Good. Jessica and I will come by Friday afternoon to do a final walkthrough. We've already contacted a realtor. She thinks we can list it by next week. Already contacted a realtor. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. That's very efficient of you. We're just trying to help you transition smoothly. His tone suggested he actually believed this. That's what frightened me most. He'd convinced himself this was kindness. After he hung up, I poured my coffee down the sink. My hands were shaking too badly to drink it. At 2 o'clock, I sat in Daniel Morrison's office. He was 71, silver-haired, with wire-rimmed glasses that magnified his concerned eyes as I explained the situation. Margaret, I'm so sorry you're going through this. He pulled out his own copy of the trust documents. But you need to understand something very clearly. Your son has absolutely no legal authority to sell this house. None. The property belongs to the Riverside Community Trust, and you have irrevocable lifetime residency rights. So I can't be forced out? Not by him, not by anyone. You'd have to voluntarily surrender your rights, which I strongly advise against. He leaned forward. If Michael attempts to list or sell this property, he'll be committing fraud. The sale would be void, and he could face serious legal consequences. Relief washed over me, but Daniel wasn't finished. However, I'm concerned about something else. He tapped his pen against the desk. If your son doesn't know about the trust structure, where did he get the idea he could sell the house? That question haunted me as I drove home. Michael had always been somewhat informed about family finances. Had I mentioned the house ownership years ago and forgotten? Or had he simply assumed that because I lived here, I owned it outright? When I pulled into my driveway, Jessica's car was parked on the street. My heart lurched. They weren't supposed to come until Friday. I found them in my backyard. Jessica was taking more photographs, close-ups of the deck, the garden shed, the fence line. Michael stood nearby talking on his phone. Yes, the property is definitely available, he was saying. My mother's cooperative. We're aiming for a quick sale. Early January closing if possible. He was talking to a realtor. Right now, in my backyard. I walked outside. Michael, what are you doing? He turned, not even looking embarrassed. Just getting things moving, Mom. No point in waiting. Jessica lowered her phone camera. We measured the lot. It's bigger than we thought. The realtor says with the location and square footage, we might get even more than estimated. Enough for the Lexus and maybe a vacation, Michael added, smiling at his wife. Something broke inside me then, not in a dramatic way, but quietly, like ice cracking under weight. These people, my son and his wife, were treating my home like a commodity, talking about my displacement as if planning a shopping trip. Michael, we need to talk, privately. My voice came out harder than intended. Not now, Mom. I'm waiting for a call back from... Now. Something in my tone made him stop. Jessica stepped closer to him, protective, territorial. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of both of us. Fine. I looked directly at my son. You can't sell this house. He laughed, actually laughed. Mom, I know change is hard, but we've been over this. You can't sell it because it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to a trust. The words hung in the air. Michael's smile faded slowly, like a light dimming. What are you talking about? Your father and I transferred ownership to the Riverside Community Trust years ago. I have lifetime residency rights, but neither you nor I can sell this property. It's legally impossible. Jessica's face went pale, then flushed red. That's not... You can't... We already talked to a realtor. Then you'll need to call her back. Michael shook his head, disbelieving. You're lying. You're just saying this because you don't want to move. I have the trust documents. I met with Daniel Morrison this afternoon. Call him yourself if you don't believe me. The look that passed between Michael and Jessica in that moment told me everything. This wasn't disappointment. This was fury. They'd already spent the money in their minds, the Lexus, the vacation, whatever else they'd planned. They'd counted on my compliance, my weakness, my confusion. They'd counted wrong. We'll contest it, Jessica said sharply. We'll find a way. There is no way. I kept my voice level. Your only option is to wait until I die, and I plan to live a very long time. Michael's face darkened. You did this on purpose. You trapped the money where I can't touch it. Your father did it to protect family assets, for your eventual benefit. You were always going to inherit, Michael. You just can't have it while I'm still alive and living here. He stepped toward me, and for the first time in my life, I felt afraid of my own son. This isn't over. Yes, I said quietly. It is. They left without another word, Jessica slamming the gate hard enough to crack the wood. I stood in my backyard as the sun set, watching their car disappear down Maple Street, knowing I'd just crossed a line from which there was no return. That evening, I called Daniel Morrison again from my landline. Daniel, they were in my yard today. Michael's already contacted realtors. What do I do? Document everything. Every conversation, every threat, every time they enter your property. If this escalates, you may need a restraining order. His voice was grim. Margaret, I've seen family disputes turn ugly. Protect yourself. I spent the night writing down every detail I could remember, dates, times, conversations. My handwriting was shaky, but the record was clear. The next day, I changed my locks. The locksmith, a kind man named Tom, noticed my distress. Everything all right, ma'am? Just being cautious, I said. I didn't give Michael and Jessica new keys. 2 days passed in tense silence. I knew they were regrouping, planning. On the third day, Thursday morning, my doorbell rang at 7:30. I looked through the peephole and saw them standing on my porch, both dressed formally. Michael in a suit, Jessica in a business dress. I opened the door with the chain still attached. Yes? Mom, we need to talk. Rationally. Michael's voice was controlled, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Can we come in? Against my better judgment, I let them in. They sat in my living room, perched on the edge of the sofa, like predators preparing to spring. Jessica spoke first, her tone honey-sweet. Margaret, we may have come on too strong earlier. We were just worried about you, and we let our concern turn into, well, we weren't thinking clearly. Michael nodded. We love you, Mom. We just want what's best for you. I said nothing. I'd heard these words before, right before they'd given me 3 days to pack. But we've been thinking, Jessica continued, about that trust situation. Surely there's a way to dissolve it, or transfer your residency rights, with proper legal counsel. No, I said simply. Michael leaned forward. Mom, be reasonable. That house is worth almost $400,000. Think about what you could do with that money. I could buy you a Lexus? The words came out sharper than I intended. His face flushed. That's not fair. We're thinking about your future. Assisted living facilities cost money. What if you need medical care? What if you just told the truth? I interrupted. You want the money now. That's all this is. Jessica's mask slipped. You're being selfish. Michael is your only son. He's worked hard his entire life, and you're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity that you're not even using. That I'm not using? I live here, Jessica. This is my home. It's too big for you, she snapped. You're one old woman in a 4-bedroom house while we're crammed in a tiny condo, working ourselves to death. Michael put a hand on her arm, but his eyes were cold. Mom, let's not pretend this is about sentimentality. You're being stubborn. Dad would want you to be practical. Bringing Robert into this felt like a slap. Your father created that trust specifically to prevent what you're trying to do right now. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Then Michael played his final card. Fine. If you won't cooperate willingly, we'll pursue legal action. We'll petition for guardianship. We'll argue that you're not mentally competent to make decisions about your living situation. My blood ran cold. You wouldn't. We would, Jessica said flatly. If you force us to. We have evidence. You're 73, living alone in a house you can barely maintain, making irrational decisions. Getting legal advice is irrational? Refusing to see reason is, Michael said. We'll document everything. Your confusion, your inability to manage finances. I'm a bookkeeper. I've managed finances for 40 years. We're a bookkeeper, Jessica corrected. Past tense. And memory problems are common at your age. I don't have memory problems. That's exactly what someone with memory problems would say. She smiled coldly. I stood up abruptly. Get out of my house. Mom, out, now, and don't come back unless I invite you. Michael stood slowly, his face a mixture of anger and something else. Hurt, perhaps, that I wasn't folding under pressure. You're making a serious mistake. We're trying to help you, and you're treating us like enemies. You gave me 3 days to pack my things so you could buy a car. You made yourselves my enemies. They walked to the door. Jessica paused, turning back. We'll be in touch with our attorney. You should get one too. You're going to need it. After they left, I locked the door and slid down against it, my heart pounding. They'd threatened guardianship. Could they actually do that? Could they have me declared incompetent? I called Daniel immediately. They're threatening to petition for guardianship. On what grounds? My age, living alone. They'll claim I'm confused or can't manage finances. Daniel was quiet for a moment. It's not easy to prove someone incompetent, Margaret. You'd have to be evaluated by doctors, and from what I know of you, you'd pass any cognitive assessment easily. But the process itself is traumatic and expensive. So it's a threat to scare me. Possibly, or a genuine strategy. Either way, I think you should see your doctor, get a current cognitive evaluation on record, establish your competency officially. I made the appointment for Monday. For the rest of the week, I heard nothing from Michael or Jessica. The silence was worse than their threats. What were they planning now? I spent the weekend in a strange fog, moving through my house like a ghost. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. On Sunday evening, I sat in my darkened living room, watching the street through the window. No cars passed. No one came. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to cry. For the son I'd lost. For the family that had fractured. For the peace that seemed impossible to reclaim. But Monday morning, I woke with resolve. I'd survived Robert's death. I'd survived loneliness, grief, and the slow erosion of my old life. I would survive this too. Monday afternoon, I sat in Dr. Patel's office, completing a cognitive assessment. She'd been my physician for 12 years and knew me well. "Margaret, I have to ask, why are we doing this evaluation?" She reviewed my test results with a slight frown. "Your scores are excellent. Memory, reasoning, executive function, all well above average for someone half your age." I explained the situation carefully, clinically. She listened with growing concern. "I'll prepare a formal letter documenting your cognitive competency," she said firmly. "And Margaret, if you need to, file for a restraining order. What they're doing is elder abuse." Elder abuse. The words followed me home like shadows. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mrs. Patterson? This is Diane Chen from Prestige Realty. Your son Michael contacted me about listing your property. I wanted to reach out directly to discuss. My property is not for sale. My son had no authority to contact you." A pause. "I see." He seemed quite certain that he was wrong. "Please remove this address from your listings and do not contact me again." I hung up, hands shaking. They were still trying. Even after I'd explained the trust, they were continuing as if I'd never spoken. Wednesday brought a new approach. A florist delivered roses to my door. Expensive ones. 24 red roses in a crystal vase. The card read, "Mom, we're sorry for everything. Can we start over? Please call. Love, Michael and Jessica." I stared at the flowers for a long time. They were beautiful. They were also meaningless. I called a women's shelter downtown and donated the arrangement. Thursday, Michael called. "Mom, did you get our flowers?" "Yes." "And? Can we talk? Really talk this time?" "What would we talk about, Michael?" His voice softened, becoming the son I used to know. "I miss you. Jessica and I have been discussing everything, and we realize we've been terrible. We let money issues cloud our judgment. We want to make things right." Something in his tone almost broke through my defenses. Almost. "How?" I asked quietly. "Come to dinner, Saturday night, our place. Just the three of us. No lawyers, no arguments, just family." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. "I'll think about it," I said. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, warring with myself. Maybe they'd genuinely realized their mistakes. Maybe this was a real olive branch. Maybe I was being too harsh, too suspicious. Then I remembered Jessica's cold smile when she'd mentioned my memory problems. I called Daniel. "They've invited me to dinner. Should I go? Do you feel safe?" "I don't know." "Then the answer is no. Margaret, reconciliation is wonderful, but it needs to be on neutral ground, with witnesses, not alone in their home." He was right. I called Michael back Friday morning. "I appreciate the invitation, but I'd prefer to meet at a restaurant. Somewhere public." Silence. Then, "You don't trust us. Can you blame me?" He hung up without answering. That afternoon, something shifted. I realized I couldn't fight this battle alone. I needed allies, support, people who understood what I was going through. I thought about my neighbor, Patricia Hoffman. We'd lived on the same street for 15 years, had coffee together occasionally, shared pleasantries over the fence. She was 68, a retired nurse, widowed like me. We'd never been extremely close, but there was mutual respect. I walked over and knocked on her door. She answered with a warm smile. "Margaret, what a lovely surprise. Come in." Over tea in her sunny kitchen, I told her everything. The words poured out. Michael's ultimatum, the trust, the threats, the isolation I felt. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone," she said firmly, "and what they're doing is unconscionable. My daughter went through something similar with her ex-husband's family. Financial manipulation disguised as concern. It's more common than you think." She paused, studying me carefully. "There's a support group at the community center, Tuesdays at 7, for people dealing with family financial abuse and elder manipulation. I volunteer there sometimes. Would you like to come with me next week?" I hesitated. Support group felt like admitting defeat, like broadcasting my family's dysfunction. "Margaret," Patricia said gently, "asking for help isn't weakness. It's strategy." On Tuesday evening, I sat in a circle of 12 people at the community center. Their stories varied in detail, but shared a common thread. Family members who saw their elderly relatives as assets to be liquidated, obstacles to be removed, problems to be solved. A woman named Carol, 76, described how her 3 daughters had tried to have her declared incompetent to access her savings. A man named Robert, 80, explained how his son had forged his signature on financial documents. Each story was a variation on the same heartbreaking theme: family betrayal disguised as care. When it was my turn to share, I spoke hesitantly. But as I talked, I felt something loosen in my chest. These people understood. They didn't judge. They'd lived it. After the meeting, several people gave me their phone numbers. "Call anytime," Carol said. "Even just to talk. It helps." I drove home feeling less alone than I had in weeks. That night, I slept through until morning, for the first time since this began. For almost 2 weeks, nothing happened. No calls, no visits, no flowers. The silence felt ominous, like the calm before a storm. I attended the support group every Tuesday. Patricia became a genuine friend. I started sleeping better, eating regular meals again. Life found a fragile new rhythm. Then, on a gray Saturday afternoon in late November, Michael and Jessica appeared at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw them standing on my porch, both dressed casually, holding a grocery bag. Michael looked tired, older somehow. Jessica's expression was carefully neutral. I opened the door but didn't remove the chain. "What do you want?" "Mom, please. We brought groceries. Can we come in? Just for a few minutes." Michael's voice was gentle, pleading. "We've done a lot of thinking, a lot of talking. We want to apologize, really apologize." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, but Patricia's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes you have to let them show you who they really are. I unlatched the chain. They entered quietly, almost humbly. Michael placed the grocery bag on my kitchen counter. Items I actually needed, I noticed. Milk, bread, fresh fruit. They'd paid attention. We sat in the living room. Jessica perched on the edge of the sofa, hands folded in her lap. "Margaret, I owe you an enormous apology. I got caught up in material desires and lost sight of what really matters. Family." Michael nodded. We both did. The Lexus, the house, all of it. It was greed, pure and simple. We were wrong. I studied their faces carefully. Michael looked sincere. Jessica's expression was harder to read, but her voice carried notes of genuine regret. "We've started seeing a counselor," Jessica continued, "about our financial stress, our marriage, our priorities. It's been eye-opening. We realized how toxic we'd become." "We don't expect you to forgive us immediately," Michael added. "We know we've damaged your trust. but we'd like a chance to rebuild it. Slowly, on your terms." They sounded so reasonable, so self-aware, so changed. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked carefully. Michael leaned forward. "Nothing dramatic, just regular visits again, dinners, conversations. Let us prove we've changed. Let us be your family again." "And the house?" I asked quietly. "The trust? Your threats about guardianship?" "Completely abandoned," Jessica said quickly. "We spoke with our own attorney. He explained the trust structure thoroughly. We understand now that the house is legally protected. And honestly," she managed a small, self-deprecating smile, "we're glad. Your father was smart to set it up that way. It protects you." They stayed for an hour, making small talk, asking about my life, sharing details about theirs. Michael mentioned they'd decided to keep their current car, focus on saving instead of spending. Jessica talked about taking up gardening, finding joy in simpler things. As they prepared to leave, Michael hugged me. "I love you, Mom. I'm sorry I forgot that for a while." After the door closed behind them, I stood in my foyer, feeling confused and hopeful and suspicious all at once. Then I noticed something. The grocery bag on my counter had a receipt tucked inside. I pulled it out absently, intending to throw it away. The items were purchased at a store 40 miles away, in the town where Jessica's parents lived. Why would they drive 40 miles to buy groceries they brought to me? Unless they'd been visiting her parents first and decided to stop by on their way home. As an afterthought. I walked to my living room and noticed something else. My mail, which I'd left on the side table, had been moved slightly. Not obviously, just a few inches. The envelopes were in a different order. Had Jessica been looking through my mail while Michael distracted me in the kitchen? And there, on the coffee table, a small smudge of dirt that hadn't been there before. Someone had touched the decorative box where I kept spare keys to my shed and garage. The warm feelings from their visit evaporated instantly. I checked the box. The keys were still there, but they'd been handled, moved. I called Patricia. They came over. The apology seemed real, but your instincts are telling you something else. Yes. Trust your instincts, Margaret. People who manipulate don't change in 2 weeks. They just get better at hiding it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of my house settling made me jump. I kept replaying the visit, analyzing every word, every gesture, searching for the trap I knew was there but couldn't quite see. Monday morning brought clarity. My neighbor 2 doors down, Paul Henderson, caught me on my way to the mailbox. "Hey, Margaret, I meant to mention, I saw your son and his wife parked across the street Saturday evening, around 10 o'clock, sitting in their car for maybe 20 minutes, just watching your house. I figured they'd had an argument or something, needed space to talk. Everything okay?" My stomach dropped. They'd come back. After their friendly visit, after their apologies, they'd returned to watch my house in the dark. Why? I walked back inside and checked every window, every door, all locked, nothing disturbed. But the message was clear. The apology had been theater. They were still circling, still watching, still waiting for an opening. And now I knew. They would never stop willingly. Whatever happened next, I would have to force their hand. I spent Tuesday morning at Daniel Morrison's office, laying out everything. The suspicious visits, the moved mail, them watching my house at night. "We need to force this into the open," Daniel said. "Right now they're operating in gray areas. We need to make them commit to a course of action that's clearly illegal." "How?" He considered carefully. "What if you invited them to a family meeting? Here, in my office, with me present as a witness. Tell them you want to discuss the house situation formally, find a resolution everyone can live with. See what they propose when they think they have an audience and legitimacy. You think they'll reveal themselves?" People who are planning something underhanded often can't help showing their cards when they think they're close to winning. I made the call that afternoon. Michael answered on the second ring. Michael, I've been thinking about Saturday, about your apology. I'd like to meet with you and Jessica formally at my attorney's office to discuss a possible compromise regarding the house. Silence. Then, what kind of compromise? I'd prefer to discuss it in person, with Daniel present. Can you come Thursday at 2? Another pause. I could almost hear him calculating. Sure, Mom, of course. We want whatever makes you comfortable. Thursday afternoon, we sat in Daniel's conference room. Michael and Jessica on one side of the polished table, Daniel and me on the other. The room felt oppressively formal with its law books and framed credentials. Daniel began with careful courtesy. Thank you both for coming. Margaret wanted to explore potential options regarding the property on Maple Street. I want to clarify from the start. The Riverside Community Trust is irrevocable, and Margaret's lifetime residency rights cannot be terminated. However, Margaret is open to discussing her long-term plans. Michael nodded earnestly. Jessica's face was a mask of polite attention. Mom, Michael said, we appreciate you being willing to talk. We know things got heated before. We're just worried about your future. What specific concerns do you have? Daniel asked. Jessica spoke up. Margaret is 73, living alone in a large house. What happens if she falls? If she has a medical emergency? The house is too much for her to maintain. We think she'd be happier, safer, in a managed living situation. With the house being sold to fund that? Daniel asked mildly. Well, yes, Michael said. The equity could provide excellent care for her for years. And any remaining funds? Daniel pressed. Michael shifted. Would be held for her benefit, obviously. Under whose management? A beat of silence. We'd assumed. Well, as her son, I'd be the logical choice to manage your mother's money? Daniel's tone sharpened slightly, even though she's perfectly competent to manage it herself. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Michael? I asked quietly. He looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw a flicker of something behind his eyes. Frustration. Impatience. Mom, you're making this more complicated than it needs to be. How so? You're sitting on $400,000 in equity that you don't need. That she lives in, Daniel interrupted. While Jessica and I are struggling, we're family. Family helps each other. His voice rose slightly. Is it so wrong to want our fair share? Your fair share of what? I asked. Property I currently live in? Property that will be yours after I die? Jessica leaned forward. If you die, Margaret, people live into their 90s now. We could be waiting 20 years. And there it was. The mask finally slipped completely. So this is about not wanting to wait, Daniel said flatly. This is about practicality, Jessica snapped. She doesn't need a 4-bedroom house. We could use that money now, when it would actually make a difference in our lives. For Alexis? I asked coldly. For vacations? Michael's face flushed. We deserve to have nice things too. You and Dad had your chance. You built your life. Now it's our turn. On my displacement? On family resources that are being wasted. Jessica stood abruptly. You're hoarding a house you can't even properly maintain out of pure stubbornness. You're punishing us for wanting to live our lives. I'm living in my home, I said, my voice ice. The home my husband and I built. The home that will be Michael's eventually. I'm not hoarding anything. I'm existing. Michael stood too, agitated. This is pointless. She's never going to cooperate, and we're back to square one. What were you planning to do if she didn't cooperate? Daniel asked suddenly. The guardianship petition? Having her declared incompetent? Jessica and Michael exchanged a look. Because I should tell you, Daniel continued, that Margaret has been formally evaluated by her physician. Her cognitive function is excellent. Any guardianship petition would fail, and you'd be out the legal fees." Michael's jaw tightened. "Then I guess we wait. 20 years. However long it takes." "And in the meantime," I asked, "you watch my house at night? Move my mail? Try to what? Catch me in some mistake?" "We were checking on you," Michael started. "At 10 o'clock at night? From your car across the street?" Jessica's eyes narrowed. "You're paranoid, Margaret. Maybe you do need evaluation." "I think this meeting is over," Daniel said firmly. They left without another word. Through the window, I watched them argue in the parking lot, Jessica gesticulating angrily, Michael's face dark with fury. Daniel turned to me. "You saw it, didn't you? Their real intentions?" "Yes," I said quietly. "They would have taken everything if they could, and they still will if I give them any opening." "So what do you want to do?" I thought for a long moment. "I want to change my will." "You want to disinherit Michael?" Daniel asked carefully. "Yes." He studied me for a long moment. "Margaret, that's a significant decision. Are you certain?" I thought about Michael's words. We could be waiting 20 years. I thought about Jessica's contempt. I thought about the son who'd given me 3 days to pack my life into boxes so he could buy his wife a luxury car. "I'm certain." Over the next week, Daniel drew up new estate documents. The Riverside Community Trust would be amended. Upon my death, the house would not go to Michael. Instead, it would be sold, with proceeds divided between 3 charities: a women's shelter, an elder abuse prevention organization, and a scholarship fund for underprivileged students at the local community college. Michael would receive nothing. "You should tell him," Daniel advised. "Give him a chance to understand what his behavior has cost him." I called Michael the following Monday. "I need to speak with you and Jessica, in person, at my house." "Mom, if this is another attempt to make us feel guilty, it's not. But you need to hear this." They arrived Tuesday evening, both wearing expressions of wary hostility. We sat in my living room, the same room where this nightmare had started. "I've made changes to my estate plans," I began without preamble. "The trust has been amended. When I die, this house will be sold. The proceeds will go to charity. You will inherit nothing." Silence. Absolute silence. Then Michael laughed. A harsh, disbelieving sound. "You can't do that." "I already have. The documents are filed and witnessed." Jessica's face went white. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't cut out your own son." "My own son told me I had 3 days to leave my home. My own son threatened me with guardianship. My own son watched my house at night like a predator. So yes, Jessica, I would, and I have." Michael stood abruptly. "This is because we wanted you to be practical? Because we suggested you downsize? You're going to punish us for trying to help." "Help?" My voice rose for the first time. "You didn't want to help me, Michael. You wanted my house. You wanted the money. You wanted me out of your way so you could fund your lifestyle. That's not fair. You told the realtor the property would be available. Before you even discussed it with me, you were planning its sale. Don't lie to me now." Jessica stepped forward, her face twisted with rage. "You miserable old woman. You'd give away hundreds of thousands of dollars to strangers rather than help your own family? You stopped being my family when you gave me an eviction notice." "We could contest this," Michael said desperately. "Undue influence, diminished capacity." "Try it," I said coldly. "I have medical evaluations proving my competency. I have witnesses to your threats and harassment. I have documentation of everything you've done. Take me to court if you want. You'll lose, and you'll look like exactly what you are: people who tried to exploit an elderly woman for money." The reality settled over them slowly. Jessica sank back onto the sofa, her face slack with shock. Michael stared at me like I was a stranger. "You're really doing this," he said quietly. "You're really cutting me out. You cut yourself out when you chose greed over family. I'm still your son." "Are you?" I asked. "Because the son I raised would never have done what you did. That boy died somewhere along the way. I've been grieving him for months." Michael's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were genuine or performative. It didn't matter anymore. "Get out of my house," I said wearily, "and don't come back. If you contact me again, I'll file for a restraining order." They left in stunned silence. After the door closed, I sat in my living room for a long time, feeling empty and sad, and, underneath it all, relieved. I'd won. The house was safe. I was safe. But victory tasted like ash. That night, I called Patricia. "It's done. I disinherited him." "How do you feel?" I thought about the question honestly. Like I've lost my son all over again, but like I've saved myself. "Both things can be true," she said gently. The next morning, I received a certified letter from an attorney's office I didn't recognize. My stomach clenched as I opened it. It was a cease and desist notice, demanding I reverse the estate changes and threatening legal action for elder abuse through coercion and undue influence from outside parties. They were trying one final angle. I called Daniel. "They're claiming I was coerced." "By whom? Me? Your doctor? Your support group?" He sounded more amused than concerned. "Let them file. They have no evidence because it didn't happen. This is desperation." He was right. The letter was followed by silence. No lawsuit materialized. No further contact came. Weeks passed, then months. Christmas came and went without a card from Michael. My 74th birthday passed unacknowledged. But I wasn't alone. Patricia and I celebrated together. The support group became a genuine community. I volunteered at the women's shelter twice a week, finding purpose in helping others who'd survived family abuse. I kept living in my house on Maple Street. Every morning, I made coffee in the kitchen Robert and I had remodeled. Every evening, I watched the sunset through the bay windows we'd installed together. The house remained mine. My life remained mine. And that was victory enough. Spring arrived with unexpected gentleness. I planted roses by the mailbox just as Robert and I had done every year. Patricia helped me, her hands deep in the soil, both of us laughing when the hose sprayed us. My life settled into a rhythm I hadn't anticipated, fuller and richer than the lonely existence before all this. Tuesday evenings remained sacred for the support group, where I'd become one of the senior members, helping newcomers navigate the legal and emotional complexities of family financial abuse. Sharing my story finally felt like it had meaning beyond my own pain. Wednesday mornings, I volunteered at the women's shelter, doing bookkeeping and putting decades of experience to good use. The director, Maria, became a friend. We'd have lunch afterward downtown. I joined Patricia's book club, 8 women, ages 62 to 85, meeting every other Thursday to discuss novels and drink too much wine. They absorbed me without hesitation, and I realized how isolated I'd become, how much my world had shrunk to just work and Michael. At 74, I was making new friends, building a life that no longer revolved around waiting for my son. The house felt different now, not a prison of memories, but a sanctuary I'd fought to keep. I redecorated the guest room into a craft space and took up watercolor painting. The paintings were terrible at first, but improving. I hung them anyway, proud of each imperfect attempt. My health improved dramatically. During my 6-month checkup, Dr. Patel said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Your blood pressure is down, you've gained back the weight, you're sleeping better. You look 10 years younger." I felt younger, lighter, free. In May, I hosted a garden party. 20 people filled my backyard. Neighbors, support group friends, book club women. We ate grilled vegetables, drank lemonade, and laughed until the fireflies came out. As the sun set, I stood on the porch and thought, this is what family actually looks like. Not blood relation, but chosen connection. I hadn't heard from Michael in 8 months, but I heard about him. Small towns have long memories and loose lips. Information filtered through neighbors and acquaintances. Michael and Jessica's marriage was crumbling. They'd been evicted and moved in with her parents. Money troubles followed them everywhere. Jessica had lost her job. Michael worked 2 part-time positions outside his field. They'd sold her car, not for a Lexus, but to pay debts. The life they'd tried to fund with my displacement had collapsed anyway. In June, I saw them at the grocery store. Our eyes met across the produce section. Michael went pale. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it. Jessica grabbed his arm and steered him away down another aisle. I continued my shopping, hands steady, heart calm. That evening, I sat on my porch with Patricia, watching the sunset paint the sky. I saw Michael today, I told her. How did that feel? Sad, I said after considering, but not painful, like seeing a stranger who shares some of my memories. Do you think you'll reconcile? Maybe, if he ever truly understands what he did. Maybe if he becomes the person I raised him to be. But I'm not waiting for it. Good, Patricia said. You've earned your peace. And I had. Each day in my house on Maple Street, surrounded by the friends I'd chosen and a life I'd rebuilt, I lived in the peace I'd fought so hard to claim. The roses by the mailbox bloomed beautifully that year. Looking back now, I understand the most important lesson. Protecting yourself isn't selfishness, it's survival. Family isn't defined by blood, but by respect, by genuine care, by seeing you as a person rather than an asset. I lost a son, but found myself. I kept my home and built a community. Sometimes the price of peace is disappointing people who never valued you properly anyway. If you're facing something similar, know this: your life matters. Your home matters. You are not obligated to sacrifice yourself for anyone's greed. I'm 75 now, still living in my house on Maple Street, still planting roses every spring. The life I fought to keep has become more beautiful than I ever imagined. And every morning, when I wake up in the home Robert and I built together, I'm reminded that standing your ground isn't about being stubborn. It's about knowing your worth. What would you have done in my situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story. May you never need its lessons, but remember them if you do.